Every Day a Better You, a podcast that's not about being better than the person next to you, but being better than the version of yourself a day prior. Your host, Fareed Johnson, accompanied by my co-host, Henri.
Hello, everyone. This is Henri. A lot of people know me as Boo. Every Day a Better You.
Welcome back to another episode of Every Day a Better You. I'm your host, Flip, and usually we cut to my co-host, Boo, but Boo has been extremely busy lately. He's doing a lot of big things, coaching, just became a fire lieutenant. He's doing so many different things, so schedules have been a little crazy for us to connect like that. Obviously, we still hang out, still see him, we're still playing ball, but as far as the podcast goes, we gotta connect so he can get back on the other seat because it's not the same without him. But what do they say, Claudio? The show must go on. So here we are. We have taken about a 4 or 5 month. Let's call it a vacation, right? Let's call this season 2. let's do that. That's the tricks that people play when they really just had to take a break because life is crazy right now. But I am not alone. Before I get to my guests, I'll give you some updates on myself because it has been a minute. I am about a month out from receiving my doctorate. I should be defending my dissertation in late June, if not very early July. So that is going to be great because I'm going to make everyone call me Dr. J, and I cannot wait for that, right? Family's good. Everyone's healthy. Girls are big. Oldest daughter still a pain in my butt, So is the youngest, my middle one. Keep being you. So I'm gonna get to my guest though. His name is Ray Hutter. He also has a podcast. He is at the podcast UndeRayted, right? He does that with our other good friend Dave Capers. So without further ado, let me introduce my man Ray.
Well, thank you, Fareed. And first, let me just start off with Boo. I think that's just pure laziness. I think it's just pure laziness. I mean, he has a lot of excuses. That's all I'm hearing. But no, I love Boo. I'm glad he's doing well.
Yeah, man, he's doing big things.
That's good. But yeah, no. So glad to be here. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to our conversation today. Trying to do the podcast thing kind of like you, UndeRayted. I'll just take a quick second to plug it.
Yeah, please.
But basically, all it is, it's really about people's stories that you don't get to hear. We had you on recently, and you had a great story, but it's former athletes that, everybody gets to interview the superstars and the head coaches, but it's very rare that you get to hear those role players or those players that are considered underrated. And it's a great time, great stories. You get to learn about a lot of different things that, even though I've known you for many years, you hear stories and you're like, wow, I didn't know he was going through that, or I didn't know he was battling through that.
Right.
And so it's a great podcast. So we'll give it a quick shout out.
Yeah, of course. You got to check that out. It is a very fantastic show, and you do learn a lot. And it's cool because a lot of us, you played high-level basketball, right? You interview some high-level basketball people, but you don't know what happened behind the scenes.
Right.
And even your co-host, Dave Capers, D1, St. Bonaventure, beat some crazy amounts of D1 players, professional athletes, and he's 50 and still dunking.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar type of dunk, but it's still a dunk.
Yeah, a little finger roll, grab the rim, but he still got it down.
That's right. He does.
I mean, that's more than I guess we can say. My last dunk was a year and a half ago. And not saying that I can't. I just don't want to, situation with my knees. I don't want them to flare up. You know what I mean?
You stick to shooting the 3-point shot. Man.
That's it.
Good. That's good.
I'll stay outside.
My last dunk was like in Nerf hoop back in,
on the door?
8th grade, 9th grade on the back of the door. But I look good. I look good when I dunked it.
But now, see, Ray, talk about stories that people don't know. Like you played at Stepinac, and you were quite a force. Talk a little bit about that and your younger years in your basketball career.
Yeah. So I played at Stepinac, graduated in 1991. We were city champs that year. I would consider myself underrated. I played with guys that were well known. Dave Conlon, Jared Smith. Dave played up at University of Vermont. Jared played at Morgan State. Mm-hmm. Dave's older brother was Marty Conlon, who played in the pros for several years. So did that, played really well, and then played up at Cortland State. for 4 years. And then after I graduated college, I actually went back to Stepanek. I coached their JV team. And then a year after that, I ended up coaching at Champlain College for like 8 years.
Yeah, see, I had no idea you had this much basketball acumen.
Yeah, no, and Division I junior college at Champlain, and coached guys like Terrell Baker, O'Neal Kamaka, Kojo Mensah-Bonsu. So a lot of people that went on to have really good college careers and played overseas, some of them. So love basketball. That's why we still play today. And then was also elected into the Stepanek Hall of Fame. So for basketball. I had my time in hoops and still trying to relive it every Saturday. But
I forgot about that. Did my invite? Did it get lost to the ceremony?
Well, I only had a certain amount of tickets,
I remember that, man, when all of that happened, man. That's awesome, because you would never think, looking at that potato head, that you did all of that.
I mean, I don't look athletic, but but that's my secret weapon.
Right,
I'm
it's
deceptively quick.
I will admit this to everyone that's watching, listening. One of the first times that we played against each other in the morning run, I got switched on to you, and I was like, please, just Ray. Like, where's he going? And you got by me quick. And I was like, oh.
Yeah,
and then
the first step.
Yeah, and then it was the next time you hit a jumper, and then one time you bodied me and flexed, and, after that, no more.
Yeah, no. Once you realized that I could play, then you had to shut it down. Which usually happens like in the first, after the first 5 minutes. So
if you had to think about like your nemesis in our morning run, who would you say it is?
Mike Coburn.
Yes.
Yeah, because Mike's angry. He yells at everybody. But me personally, I'm like, he does it because he loves us.
Yeah,
and he thinks we can do things.
It's like an abusive dad.
Right.
Like, I beat you because I love you, son.
Right. Yeah. So, if I get yelled at Mike, I've had a good day, But the best is when you beat him and you send him off, and then he leaves early. As soon as he loses, he leaves.
He leaves.
He's a little bit,
Yeah,
I know. A little bit of prima donna.
And you can't tell him anything either. Like, he can yell at you, but you can't yell at him.
Yes. So, so he's probably my biggest nemesis.
I like it. it. And what's your go-to these days? Because we haven't played in a couple of Saturdays. I played, but we haven't played at the spot that we usually play. So have you been able to continue to be active? Because you're in the health industry. We're going to get into that as well. But have you continued to be active?
So I had a few pickup games at an undisclosed location that I was invited to. And so I don't want to give that up. But we are working. We are very close to getting another gym. So looking forward to that. Hopefully this weekend. I'll find out more, hopefully tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, a lot of times when I get home from work, I take advantage of just doing walks around the block. But I had a really special moment yesterday. I got home from work, and I was like, I'm going to go take my walk, my dad walk. And my 20-year-old son was like, Dad, you want to play hoops? And I was like, yeah, wow, let's
awesome.
go. So we played one-on-one in the driveway. Of course, I crushed his soul and beat him 40-10. But that's just because,
you can't let them kids win.
You got to represent and let them know who's, still that you still got it. So, but yeah, just trying to do little things because, obviously being healthy, especially I'm 53. And so
you would not be able to tell, bro. Good for you.
Well, thank you. And so just, playing basketball has kept me young and kept me fresh, but staying active is really important. And so I try to find different ways because I never been the type of guy, and it probably shows, but to go to a gym, like a health club, and try to lift weights with all these big guys. So, I always try to find whether I have a little gym in my basement or whatever, but, just always trying to figure out not just physically healthy, but mentally healthy, right? And just always trying to put yourself in places that are positive and trying to keep that negativity out of your life.
It's funny, if you didn't say your age, you would have aged yourself when you called the gym a health club. So I just wanted to point that out before we move on.
I'm old school.
I see that.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about, so before we get into what you actually do, right? Can you talk a little bit about, because you said something really, really cool just now about, the mental aspect of what working out does to you. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that has done for you in life? Because I know for me, you having a bad day, you're going through a bad time. I know I'm always going to have the gym and basketball, right? And then people don't understand. And I try to tell people close to me, it's not just about being physically fit. If you're depressed, if you're going through whatever it is that you're going through in life, if you work out and you actually like do something, get them endorphins going, like
Yes.
it really does work. It's science that actually works. So can you talk a little bit about that and how that has helped you in your life?
Yeah, I think I work in a very, and we'll get to it, but a stressful industry, right? Healthcare IT. And so, you're on the clock 24/7 because, in healthcare, there's no rest. And you always have to be on. And your systems always have to be up and running, right? So they can, the clinicians can do what they do best, which is take care of patients. And so, every day is a grind. So you need those outlets. And to your point, right, every day, or every Saturday when we play basketball, right, people will ask, why are you still doing it at age 53? And one, I'm like, because I still can.
Right, exactly.
But two, it's the camaraderie, it's the talking trash, it's making fun of each other, but it's also the competition. And that's what I love, is still being able to compete. And it really does relieve the stress in your life, having that one thing to look forward to. And whether you play really well or you play poorly, you're just out there with your friends, you're having a good time. And for that hour and a half that you're playing, all of that noise in your life goes away. And it's really important. And that's what I said about like even walking and listening to music, just taking time to get out of your head and get out of that noise that's telling you like, oh, you have to do this, you have to take care of this, the meetings are tomorrow, your presentations are tomorrow. When you're doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's going to have an impact on you. And I think having that outlet with friends and basketball or going to the health club or, things like that, you have to have outlets because life is so hard as it is. And if you don't have those outlets, then all you're thinking about 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is what you have to do next. And it affects your sleep. It affects your relationships, and it affects you physically. So having those outlets are really important. And I'm so blessed that we've had this for so long where we can do that. But basketball has been a huge part of my life. I've been playing since 6 years old. And you sit there and you're just like, all right, what can I do to be positive and stay positive? And like you, right? We all have family members. We all have friends that are going through it. And, a lot of times they'll look to you, they'll look to me to, especially being in healthcare, a lot of people look to me like how to navigate their own health or their family's health, or they need an appointment that needs to happen quickly. And so they always look to you and you have to answer the phone because that's what you're supposed to do.
And then talking about answering the phone, your job, middle of the night, system goes down, you're the guy that's getting that call, correct?
Well, hopefully they've gone through multiple people, but if it gets to me, it's bad. And that means that we need to react and we need to have a solution quickly. So usually if it's 2 a.m. and we get that call, they've gone through every possible checkpoint to, make sure. And then it's like, get everybody on the call, not just me, but everybody from an IT perspective to, make sure that we get those systems back online as soon as possible.
How did you get into IT?
So it's
especially IT and then healthcare.
Yeah, no.
IT.
So long story short, right out of college, I was a high school teacher, and did that for 1 year, and then I went up to Champlain College, and I got my master's in IT because it was the time where like web pages were like the cool thing. And so I was like, what a great recruiting tool.
At the internet cafe?
Yeah, at the internet cafe. But I was like, what a great tool, right, to like for recruiting, right? So create a web page. And so if we had like a really nice dunk or a big win, right, putting a link out of that video so that high school kid that you're now going to go visit on a recruiting trip, you can say, oh, go to our website and you'll see the box score from last night. You'll see a nice dunk that we had and the atmosphere that we play in. So I was like, oh, this is great. Like, but I had initially focused on, I wanted to be a Division I, head basketball coach. And so when I got my master's degree in technology, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. I'll utilize that. And then we got the call that they were canceling the sports program. And, they were like, basically, you have a couple of years and then no more sports. And that was like a really horrible decision by the school, in my opinion. But then I ended up right down the road from Champlain College was a healthcare IT system company. And, I knew some people that worked there, so one thing led to another, and I went for an interview, and I got the job as a software trainer, and then I started flying around the country implementing software, and that's kind of what led me to the healthcare IT area. So it was crazy.
That's such a dope story.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about that climb, what are some failures that you can think about that you had to learn from quickly?
Yeah, I think, every day is a learning opportunity. Also, what you learn is that when you're flying around the country and you're going to different health systems, you realize that not everybody is a big fan of you trying to implement your software. And you would be in a room with clinicians that, didn't want to be there. And you had to figure out, okay, I need to make them engaged and have fun and want to be here to learn. And so there was a lot of times where my first few trips were awful, where I was like, this job is not for me. Like, I can't connect with these people. I'm watching like all these medical shows so I can get the terminology down right. But then you start to go back to what you grew up on, which was basketball or competition in sports. So I started making like my lessons. I was like, listen, I got to get through some of this stuff and it's going to be boring, but by tomorrow we're going to have a lot of fun. So then my lessons became competitions. So I would walk in the next morning after going over all of like the basic stuff. And I was like, all right, we're going to break into 2 teams. Who wants to be captains? And like you'd have a physician here, a nurse here. They pick their own teams. And then I would make jokes like the last person that got picked, it was like, now you know where you rate in this organization because they picked you last, so just to break up the monotony. But then I would like play games so that reinforcing what they were learning, but doing it in a way where they were engaged. And I remember there was one specific site where all of a sudden you see these grown professionals yelling and screaming because they're like, they're cheating, and like laughing. And I was like, all right, I got them. So then I changed like the whole curriculum, and no one else did this. Like everybody stuck to the rules, but I changed my whole curriculum. So anytime I flew around the country implementing this software, it became like the first day was hard to get through, but then the next 2 days, it was all competitions. And people came up to me and said, I thought this day was going to be miserable and we were going to be trapped in this training room, but you just made my day because like I made sure that I just did things differently, but it was all going back to like that coaching mentality and, the basketball player in me that said, if I have to fly around this country and spend all this time, I'm going to at least have fun doing this. So that's what I did. But I learned after a few times, like, I got to change me and be who I am, like, and keep my truth instead of trying to like be somebody else that was boring and stale. And so that was probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned and had to pivot quickly. Otherwise I would have failed at that role.
That's amazing. Because I try to tell people all the time, in the field of education, being a leader in education, it's like any interview that I've been on, any teacher that I talk to, any person that I work with, I talk about how important sports was.
Yes.
And it's just because the lessons that you learn, especially in a game like basketball, when you have to make it about the team, you going by just for yourself, you're gonna fail, right? You're that ball hog, you're gonna fail, right? But when you can really like bring people together as a leader, but also a peer. You do remarkable things. You learn so many things. You pick up things from different coaches. Then you start reading books by different coaches, and you start watching how these coaches act and interact with their players, and that stuff sticks with you. And it sounds like you do the same thing.
Yeah. I actually run. I've always thought, like, especially in like implementing computer software. I actually, if I had the time, or if I wasn't lazy like Boo, I would write a book actually, and I would break it out to like, a software implementation is similar to like a coaching a regular season, right? So you have your preseason where you're scoping out the project, right? You're picking your team, you're getting everybody assigned their roles and so on. And then you got the regular season, which is the actual implementation part. And then you got the playoffs, which is what we call the activation or go live, right? That's the championship. If you're successful and you do well at the go live, everybody's high-fiving, right? If you don't do well, everybody's pointing fingers.
Right.
And then you have the postseason, which is you're getting ready to start your next implementation. So that postseason, you're like, okay, what did we do well? What didn't we do well? What changes can we make? And so you really run an implementation like a season. At least in my head, that's how it worked, where you're like, all right, I'm going to run this like I would run a team, right? We're going to have a preseason, a regular season,
it's
a
just
postseason.
that simple.
It really is.
When you
It
think
really
about
is.
it in terms of sports, it's just that simple.
Yeah.
So, speaking of sports,
Yes.
all right, we're going to rewind a
Yes.
little bit because you are a Stepinac alum.
Yes.
Okay. Now, how comfortable are you talking about this topic out here about what just happened with Stepinac?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm Team Stepinac.
Right.
And I think what happened was ridiculous.
And for the people that have been under a rock, can you revisit
Yeah,
what
I mean,
happened there?
basically, Stepinac, and I don't want to get quoted on this or, taken out of context, but from what I understand is, Stepinac was invited, well, not even Stepinac, but, the team was invited to go play in the national tournament, and it was, it was a great thing for the CHSAA and, to bring recognition back to this league that has been so famous and has had fantastic player upon fantastic player, players from Rice, Cardinal Hayes, all those fantastic teams. And, now a lot of kids don't even go to those schools, right? They go to the basketball factories, the prep schools, and so on. And, so my understanding was they were invited to go out. They went out. They didn't represent Stepinac. They represented, another team from New York. And they had an opportunity to really showcase a really fantastic bunch of players. And, apparently that was frowned upon. And, long story short, they're, have some penalties now against them. Thankfully, the penalties are not as bad as it seemed or what people were talking about. But I just think that, Coach Pat Massaroni does such a fantastic job there and has done and really spends so much time putting his kids first. He commits so much time to that program and to that school, and they've been good, or not even good, they've been great for so many years. I mean, they won 4, championships back to back to back.
And he turned down one of those factories, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so, so what he's done is fantastic, and all the alumni support him. They support the school, and I just think that it's a shame that, instead of other people trying to lift their programs up to that level, they're trying to tear down Stepinac. And that's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, no, that's the opinion of a lot of people that I talk to about this because, live in White Plains, got a lot of people that went to Stepinac that we're friends with, that are friends with people from Stepinac. We used to play open gym at Stepinac, right? So it's right there. And it's like, it really, the saying is true. It hits really close to home, and we know the coach, and we knew players from there. So it is a shame, but it sucks because that's the world we live in now, right? You do well, people want to take you down.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'll never truly understand why, because there's room for everyone to be successful. And as brothers, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, right? It doesn't matter, politics, whatever. There's room for everyone. So why all the hate?
Yeah, you know what? I think, again, it goes back to being successful takes effort, right? Life is not easy. And, anyone that tells you life is fair, they're lying to you. Life is not fair for a lot of people. And so I think overall, people that put in the work and are successful, a lot of times, the people that don't want to put in that work and don't want to put in that effort, easiest thing is to try to break you down and bring you back down a level instead of supporting you and, working together, and I think that's why, going back to the camaraderie and friendships that we have, there is not one person that comes into our run that's negative and is rooting for people, in a bad way. Like everybody always wants to help everybody. You know, everybody has a way to help someone else, and you see it actively in our circle.
Oh yeah, and don't get it twisted. Like, we mess with each other,
of course.
Like, we joke at each other, and even about like we could be going through the most serious things, like what I just went through in Pelham recently.
Right.
The jokes were crazy, right? Like, and it's like, what are you gonna?
Yeah,
what
I
are you
should apologize.
gonna do? But it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, these are your people. That's what
Right.
you're supposed to do.
Right.
They make you laugh in hard times and in good times. So, I for one appreciate that camaraderie. I appreciate waking up to those group texts, seeing who's gonna get locked out of the run, who's number 16, who's on the Juan
Right.
Pablo wait list.
The memorial wait list for Juan Pablo.
So,
Yes.
yeah, those things are, and you talk about connection, right?
Yes.
And this is why I love these kind of organic conversations, because it just keeps going into different
Right.
things. So that run, it tells a story of the power of connections,
Yes.
right? So there's so many people that I would not know that are really huge in my life now if it weren't for sports, in particular basketball, right? And you build relationships. I've gotten people jobs from
Yes.
it, right? Recruitments, like anything, right? I actually talk about Stepanak. Like I knew the coach at Stepanak and had a player that wanted to go and got them connected at one point a little while ago. Don't want to say names again, but it's just the power of connections through sports is wild, and it's something I tell my daughters all the time. I was like, I don't care how much you like the sport, you're gonna play sport because it's about more than just a sport. It's about the people you meet, the connections you make, the lessons you learn,
Right.
the discipline,
Yes.
right? The sacrifice. You have to give up so much to play sports, but you gain so much.
Yes. 100%.
And so when you think about that, have you, like, through the relationships that we've made through this, what's, like, let's say I'll do it twofold. What's the biggest gain that you've had from it? And it doesn't even have to be monetary or anything like that. And what's the biggest give that you've done?
So I'll start with the give. I think, my connections in the healthcare space, anytime somebody would come to me and ask, like, hey, a family member needs an MRI, or a family member needs to see a doctor, and, being able to, navigate through the 3 to 4 months on average that it takes to get an appointment, and be able to get an appointment the next day or the next week. That's what I would give, for that. Like, I'm like the healthcare guy, right? So I would do whatever I could to help friends, family, friends of friends, to help them, get the health they needed, because right away, the unknown is worse than the knowing, right? So, like, if you think you have something, you're going to do the Googling, you're going to go to the chat GPTs and try to diagnose yourself. But being able to go and get an appointment quickly, and being able to, alleviate that fear or that anxiety is a huge thing. So I think besides, my point guard skills, I think I bring, that to the team. And I think what I get back is, like, for example, like, we started off the podcast, UndeRayted, and I think our first, 12 guests were people that played in the run that have incredible stories, and they were willing to take out their time of, like, trying to find Juan Pablo's studio,
Yo, that thing, it comes up quick, bro. Pause, but it does.
Right. So, but them willing to give me their time. And as you get older, right, like 53 years old, you find out that the most precious asset in your life is time, because it goes by very quickly. And so I think any one of us that gives our time to people is the most precious thing that you can do for anyone. It's so much better than just giving $100 and saying, get out of my face, or whatever the case may be. If you take that time in your life to spend with others, you're going to make a huge impact in a very positive way. And I think if more people understood the impact that they could make just being a positive person in someone's life, because to your point, you don't know what people are going through. They could be sitting there laughing and joking around, and meanwhile their home life is miserable. They have a brave face on there, but they're going through it. They could have family members that are going through stuff, and we're able to have that bond and joke around, and it takes your mind off of it. But once you leave the court, that stuff doesn't disappear either. No. So I think I've given a lot back to the crew to help them any which way I can. But in return, a lot of people have given me time. They've made new connections for me. And, I've been able to grow my circle of friends and family, just based on those relationships.
That's amazing. And I get to see it firsthand.
Yeah.
So I know there's no BS in your
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's get deep for a second, Ray. So the premise of this show, right? It's about going back, thinking about something negative that happened in your life, and how you use that to spin it to a positive. So, for example, I tell a story. The one of the first stories I told on this platform was about how growing up, right? My life has been, like, you heard some of it. So I used to steal a lot, and like that. Obviously, that's not great, right? And I remember at Claudio, because Claudio is my really good friend from college, and he remembers when I stole a computer when I was at Manhattanville and had it for 2 weeks and then tried to hook it back up to the same internet I stole it from, right?
Yeah.
Like stupid, but also could be like one of those things like, oh, was this some kind of like intervention that needed to happen for you to
Absolutely.
like get on the right path, right? So leave Manhattanville, go CW Post, do well, but I don't get along with the basketball coach, come back to Manhattanville, finish my career, right? But still, it's a really bad thing that happened. So how I use that in the future, I tell the parallel story of another kid that was stealing from the lunchroom, okay? And then, teachers, oh, he needs to be suspended. I'm like, no, let me talk to him. No one ever talked to this kid. So it's my first year as principal. And I was like, hey, what's going on here? And he was like, I don't have food at home. I take this so I can have it for me and my sister. I was like, yo, that's done.
Right.
Programs are initiated. Like, this is what we're doing right now.
Right.
This is the process. We're not getting rid of food. We're going to have this here. So he's not embarrassed. He gets to take it whenever he wants.
Yeah,
that's it.
great.
Done. And, I don't think I react the same way with that amount of care if it wasn't for what I went through
Right. You lived
back
it.
then. Like,
Yeah.
I know what it's like. I knew what it was like to have to steal for food, you know what I
Right.
mean? And not know when your next meal was coming. So that's kind of like the premise. So for you, think about a time where, and again, it could be something that happened to you, somebody else that you care about, whatever, but just a time where something didn't go right and how you took that lesson from what you learned then and apply it to your life now.
Yeah, so I got like three things just came to mind that you said. Because when you were on my podcast, I was laughing. I actually was watching it the other day just to like refresh some things. And I remember you saying like, well, I know how I was raised. And you pointed to capers. And you were like, and I know how you were raised. But you pointed to me and you were like, I don't know how you were raised, And I, so it was kind of funny because I was like, oh, yeah, here we go. Now it's going to start. But I think three major things happened in my life, right? So my parents got divorced when I was 4. Like, dad ran out. My mom ended up marrying a person who turned out to be like a total asshole, and I don't know if we're allowed to curse or not. So, but it just like not physically abusive, but verbally abusive. Like, told me and my brothers like we were never going to amount anything. We're going to be like our dad. You're going to be losers. Like, that's all we heard, right? And that's one thing that me and my brothers joke around now, that like when we get to heaven, the first question we're going to ask my mother is, out of all the guys, how'd you pick that one?
Right.
Just but ask that question because you're like, damn, he was such an asshole. And but I, one of my brothers struggled with that, but in my head, I used it as motivation to say, I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to have this great life. And one day I'm going to come back and be able to stick it in your face and tell you like, yeah, I don't need you. I never did need you. And, all of that, which thankfully did occur. I was able to get that in before he passed. And then I felt guilty because I was like, damn, he died. But my last words to him weren't the nicest. But I think having like, that, like where you're just being told you're no good all the time, no matter whether you were successful or not, you're going to be a loser. You're going to be a loser. And I just use that as like motivation, right? To like do better. Also, the best decision I made was to go to Stepinac. So I went to public school my entire life up until like high school. And I was hanging out with a crew of guys that were going in the wrong direction. And I was right there leading the pack. And, I was just a good friend of mine that I played basketball with at the time. He was like, yo, I'm going to Stepinac. And he had been there for a year. And he was like, you should go there. He's like, one, you can play. and two, it's a great environment, and it's better than any public school you can go to for hoops that's in this area. And I grew up in like the Elmsford area, so would have went to Tarrytown schools for high school, and so that change of just random conversation with him, and he was like, "Yo, you should go there," and so I went, and that changed my life, changed the whole trajectory to the point where, like, we have a text string of like 14 people, and we've had this text string forever. And like, I'm in like really serious meetings and boardrooms with like, the highest leaders of a hospital. And I just feel my phone vibrating, and I know it's the text chat, and it's not going to be about anything important, but I'm like, I can't wait till I go back to my office so I can read.
Right.
I can read
100
all the
messages
chats.
later.
Right.
Yeah.
But so Stepanak was the changing point in my life, which just put me on the right path to like, get me going. My stepfather was my motivation to prove him wrong, that I wasn't going to be a loser. But the biggest impact that had on me, I was 23 years old. My mom died of cancer. And I was coaching at Champlain. And so I had moved up to Champlain in August, or Burlington, Vermont. That's where Champlain was. But I'd moved up there in August, and she died December 1st in 1996. And that was like crushing, because she was the rock of our family, right? Like, we didn't have to check in with anybody but her, and she would tell us what my two brothers were doing and everybody else in the family was doing. And so when I lost her, I was like, okay, I'm at a crossroads. And funny story, and people probably make fun of me about this, but like the ground was so frozen that year that like they couldn't like put her in the grave.
Well, that was that crazy winter, 96.
So they couldn't put her, like, they had to wait till the springtime. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that was the case. Like, I didn't, so. And the reason why I bring that up is because I was down over break recruiting. But every night, like for like 5 nights in a row, like she died December 1st, and I was in between break from like December 15th to January 2nd, and I was recruiting. And somehow, you have a little too much to drink or whatever, I would end up at that cemetery yelling and screaming to her, thinking she's there. And come to find out, she didn't get like buried till like the spring, and she wasn't even there. So I laugh at it myself now, because I'm like, damn, what you risk driving there at like 3 a.m. So, but yeah, so it was, but that like kind of like, so I was at a crossroads. Like, I was living in Vermont, didn't really know anybody. And then it was like, all right, you have 2 choices, man. You can survive and thrive, or you could call it in and just be like, you know what? No one would blame you if you went the other way, because, your mom, your strongest person in your life, is no longer there. And, again, it comes back to that competition, all your life practicing and learning about adversity, right? Like, we grew up in an era where there wasn't the, participation trophies.
Ever.
Like you either won or you didn't get anything.
Yeah.
But it also taught you that life is not fair. Not everybody's going to be a champion. But if you wanted to get to that level, you had to work at it. But to your point earlier, how sports teaches you so much, it teaches you how to deal with adversity, how to deal with loss, and get back up. And that's kind of what I did. Like, I just said, you know what? This isn't going to be the end of my story. I got too much to give. And so I just took it the other way, and I used it as like, I'm going to do this for you, Mom. I'm going to do it for myself, but I'm going to have the best life possible, and I'm going to bring everybody in my family that I can to make sure they're successful. And those were the 3 biggest things, looking back in my life, the 3 things that really had a huge impact on where I am today. And I tell my kids all the time, like, listen, you're going to get knocked down. You got to get back up. That's all it is. Until you can't breathe, you got to get up and fight.
Right. No, that's awesome. It's so crazy because like we've known each other for a long time, and you said that's why these stories are so powerful. But I never knew like we're similar in where we use negativity to fuel us. Like I love, and Claudia will tell you this as well. Like, I love when people say I can't do something,
Right.
because it's like, all right, well, now I'm gonna do it. I tell people all the time when I got married. People, the reason why I even asked her out on a date was because somebody at the school said I would never be able to date her.
Right.
So I was like, okay,
Right.
hold my soda, because I didn't drink back then. So it's hold my soda, right? And watch. So it's just funny how how those things work. That negative,
Yeah.
like learning, like, oh, I can't do it. All right, now I'm gonna do it, and then you get to the point where it's like, oh, all right, well now I'm doing this for me.
Yeah.
Right. Forget everyone that said I couldn't do something. Use it to get you there. But then once you get there, the negativity, it's a heavy weight.
Yeah.
And you don't want to always carry it. And you see, I get mad all the time, not in life, but in basketball.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the rage. I've seen the rage.
But
The one thing, though, is when you get mad, you keep shooting sometimes. And everybody's like, why? It's not your day today.
because you always think you can overcome it no matter what.
I get it.
So today we played, and Danny was guarding me, and he was talking like he's always talking, right? I got you. And I was like, all right. And I just had missed 3 threes before that. And then after that, I hit 2 beyond NBA range threes right in his face, and he couldn't talk anymore. You know what I mean? So that happens too.
Well, I remember like sometimes like, we switch off and I end up having to guard you in the post. And like I think one time I like blocked your shot.
Yeah.
You did call a foul, but it was like it was like an embarrassment foul because I legit blocked your shot. But then all of a sudden, like that lit a fire under you because you're a big dude, and like you came down the next 2, like drop stepped and like knocked me across the key, and I was like, damn, like man, he went from embarrassing himself calling a foul to like I just called his family some bad word and like he's gonna kill me now.
That's what you gotta think. Like, remember what Jordan say? He used to make up stories.
right.
People, he was talking about my mother. Nah, I wasn't talking about your mother.
Yeah.
But that's what you gotta tell yourself sometimes. Yeah. How many kids do you have?
3 kids, 3 boys.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do they all play?
You know what? I think none of them played basketball, and that's my fault. They did. Like I coached them, but I was so competitive that like I couldn't turn it off. And like when you coach in college and you've coached in high school and now you're trying to coach your kids, you can't turn off that competitiveness.
It's a relationship ruiner.
And not only to your point, like they couldn't separate dad from coach. Mm-hmm. So it was like when I was yelling at them to like do the right thing or the right play or make the right move, they would just get all of a sudden they would be like, yeah, listen, I don't want to play anymore because, like I had one time out where my son got up off the bench and like I was on one knee and he came and sat on my knee and put his arm around me. And I was like, no, you can't. Daddy's coaching, And like looking back at that now, he was probably like, Dad doesn't love me. Like he doesn't want me sitting on his lap or, and I'm like, so I had a tough time like separating like that. And I was a total psychopath. Like, I mean, I'm coaching like 7-year-old, 8-year-old kids. And like, and I'm like up and down the sideline pacing. I'm like sitting there. People are like, if they read my lips, what I saw, like what I was saying, But yeah, so I was very competitive, and they ended up, all 3 ended up playing different sports. My oldest played baseball, and he was really successful at it, played in college. My middle son played soccer in high school, and then my youngest son played high school and soccer in high school, but also played travel soccer, and he was fantastic. And you talk about like an old school dad or old school coach. I feel so horrible, but funny story and not haha, but. My son had a rocket for his right foot. He could kick the soccer ball, and when he got into high school, like I used to stand in the goal, and then when he got to a certain point, he would kick that ball so hard, I would just be like, no, I'm not trying to even block it. I am getting out of the way. Right. But his left foot, like I was like, you're not working hard on your left foot. You're just not. Like you see how hard you kick with your right foot? So fast forward to his senior year in high school, he was like, I'm in pain, my left hip, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll take you to the best orthopedic, surgeon. We'll go there. We'll get MRIs all of a sudden. And so all of a sudden the MRI showed that he had like a malformation in his hip where his ball socket didn't go deep enough into his hip. And so I asked the doctor, I was like, so would that by any chance be a reason why he can't turn and like kick a soccer ball with his left foot as he can with his right? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. He has no strength in that hip. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like I apologized to him in the office. I was like, for like the last 6 years, I'm telling him he's not working hard enough on his left foot. But meanwhile he's got to, but so those are things that you learn. But it's that competitive, like rub some dirt on it, get back out there and play.
Put some tussin on it.
Right. But, but so like you just sit there and now like he reminds me all the time. He's like, because it was unfortunate because he would have had to have a 7-hour surgery and basically a 1.5 to 2 year recovery before he could play again. And so he had to make that hard decision like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to be able to play soccer in college. But what he did start doing is going back and coaching young kids in a rec league by where we live. And so he's carrying it forward in a way that he can because it was like, all right, you're not going to play, Major League Soccer. You're not going to a World Cup or, playing over in Europe or somewhere. So, it's not worth, trying to go through that surgery. So, he made the mature decision of like, all right, but I'll give it back, as a coach now. And so, so I'm really proud of him for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're getting toward the end here. I still want to ask you a couple more questions.
Yes.
If you could, and it doesn't have to be yes, but if you could go back and change anything about your life, would you?
Honestly, I am the type of person that doesn't live with regrets. So I think, experience is a great teacher. Life is a fantastic journey, both the ups and the downs, but you learn from everything. And I don't think I would be here today doing as well as I am physically, mentally, professionally, if I didn't have to go through what I went through. You know what I mean? Like, I think like... for some reason, I don't know if my family would say this, but like I am very self-aware. Like I know, and you probably the same way. I know when I haven't given it my all, and I will drive home from work one day, and I'll be like, that shit happened because you weren't your best today. You weren't giving it 100%. You were just trying to get through the day, go through the motions for whatever reason. And so I could look at myself and just immediately say, that's on you. Like, you're supposed to be the leader of the team. You didn't show up today. So that you have no one to blame but yourself. Exactly. And so I think I do that really well. So I wouldn't change anything, honestly.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? I really feel like, God puts you on a path and you're going to have ups and downs, but that's the whole reason is to prepare you throughout the rest of your life to get through these tough times that you're going to experience. Because no one, unless you're like, a gazillionaire, right? You're going to have tough times.
It's funny you say that because I used to question my faith after my sister died and my mom died, then my foster mother died, my foster dad died, my dad died when I was 11, right? So all this death, we were poor, we were homeless. So, but yet, I was at church every Sunday, right? And you start to think, why the hell is this happening? Like, God knew my sister was my best friend. Why? Right? But to your point, it's like you go through things so later on you can deal with things because you're going to have to continue to deal with things, right? In order to continue to receive any kind of blessings, you're going to have to go through something. So that really does hit home.
And to that point, they say God works in mysterious ways, right? So that my stepfather, who I hated with a passion, unbeknownst to me, I ended up being the executor of his estate. And I had to take care of all of the stuff that he had left because my mom obviously passed before he did. And so all of a sudden I was like, ain't this something?
That's crazy.
Even in the grave, I'm getting screwed. But it's like God's way, saying like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to show you grace, and you're going to have to deal with this, and you're going to have to, do the right thing, and that's what I had to do. But I was like, this is some shit.
No,
I got to take care of all of his stuff.
Gotta be laughing sometimes. Right. You got jokes.
Right.
Last thing.
Yes.
And this one's, I guess, a little deep. So, if you think about something recently or a long time ago that you had to kind of give up, it's something that you were doing, a bad habit or anything like that you were doing that you had to give up, and it changed you for the better, what would that be? And I'll give you a quick example, right? So for me, and I've thought about this. I had time to prepare for this. You did not.
Right.
So I thought about this because I knew I was going to ask it. And for me, I think it has to do with relationships, right? So I pride myself in being good at building relationships. But I used to get too involved and take things way too personally, right? Oh, he didn't text me, she didn't text me, my sister didn't text me, right? And I got to the point, and I'm not gonna say who got me to that point, but it was bad. Look, talk about negative learning. It was bad. I got to the point where I was like, you know what? If this person doesn't want to be in my life, F it.
Right.
Like, who the fuck? You don't want to rock with me or my family, right? Fine. But me doing that to that one person, it started trickling to other relationships. And Ray, when I tell you I'm so much lighter and I feel so much freer from doing that, because it's just like extra luggage, right? You don't want to carry extra luggage to the airport that you don't need.
Right.
And that's all it is. It's like, what value are you adding to my life anyway?
Yeah.
If you don't want to have a reciprocal relationship, I'm out. And I think that was the toxic thing that I got rid of. Like I invested way too much time in people that didn't want to invest that time in me. And done. And I'm telling you, it's been the most freeing thing I think I've ever done.
Yeah.
So do you have something like that?
You know, like as you said, like I've been thinking. Honestly, I think for the first time in a while, I started to, and not to be selfish, but I actually started to put myself first, because for so many years I couldn't tell people no. If people needed something, I would have went through everything to get them that, right? And I don't know if it was just me trying to, like, you know, be that person that everybody could count on, but it was draining on me. Like, it physically was draining on me. And I realized that as I get older, I can still help people, but I also have to help myself. And, you know, saying no at times to people that you love, or, you know, because you're like going through it yourself and you just need a moment. You know, I think that's one of the things that, and this is just recent, like this is probably within the last year, where I felt like I could breathe again, and that, like, I'm like, you know, okay, it's okay to focus on myself, because I've been so focused on everybody else that, you know, I now need to say, like, as you get older, you know, and you start to break down, you start, all of a sudden you go to the doctor and they're like, got to put you on some medication, you know, or whatever, you know, but you start thinking, like, okay, at some point, you know, I have to be able to start depending on others to reciprocate the love that I've been giving. And I think, like I said, it's for the first time probably in a year, like, I feel like every day I can breathe again. And it's not that I'm not helping people, but it's not to the point where I felt like my self-worth was because I was helping everybody else. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes
but
perfect sense.
It just is like you get so caught up in everybody else's life trying to help them that you're like, you forget about yourself. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, you know, I'm like, you know, I got to go to the doctor. I'm not, know, a cold now turns into a flu, now turns into pneumonia, because you were going 24/7 and you never took care of yourself. And so, you know, there was a time, like a couple years ago, just real quick, like took a trip down to Miami, hanging out with some friends. I came back with some sort of like mixture of like RSV, COVID, flu.
STD?
No, not that. Thank God, that's somebody else we know. No. But I was so sick to the point where I was scared. I was like dying. Like, I literally remember, like, I couldn't breathe, and I was like, you know, walking around like a psychopath with the pulse ox on your finger, and I'm looking at it, watching go from like 94 down to 90, then to 92, and I'm like, I'm dying. I have to go to the emergency room. But it also took, like, you know, made me realize, like, you know, you're not that young guy anymore that can bounce back as quickly. So you get these type of illnesses at, like, you know, the middle age, you know, that can put you in the hospital or worse.
Checked out.
Right. So I think it's now where I'm like focused on, like, you know, still helping people, but doing it in a way that doesn't have a negative impact on me, where I'm consumed with it.
That's amazing. Ray, you know, I actually want to invite you over for dinner now.
Well,
I feel like we became closer in this past hour.
I mean, I've only asked for several months to hang out with you.
No, we're definitely going to make it happen now, because I didn't realize we were so similar.
Yeah, no.
Like that. And you called it on your podcast, you're like, yo, I got some stuff.
Right. You know, don't look at this pretty face like it just happens. You know, like I mean, it's a grind. You know, I mean, you've been through it. We've all been through it. And again, you know, I think you made a comment earlier when we first started. It doesn't matter like race, ethnicity, all that. Like everybody goes through it. You know, and what makes it better for us is we can have conversations like this. We have the camaraderie. We have the relationships, and that's what gets you through it.
Yeah, in our circle, we have so many people from different industries. Like, we don't really have to go far. It's a phone call to one of us.
Yep.
Anything you want to leave the people with? So we usually do like a gym, right, where it's like something that they can take away, work on, whatever. Anything you want to leave for the people today?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, there's different aspects of your life, and they're all hard. You just got to choose your hard. You know,
I like that.
So, and I can't take credit for that.
I know, I've heard it before. I wasn't gonna.
No, that's a quote.
I wasn't gonna blow you up like that.
Yeah, no. But I actually just read that a couple days ago, and I was like, yeah, you know, everybody has a choice, you know, and it's just what choice you make.
It's a famous quote, and I'm pretty sure it's also the title of some kind of sex tape out there.
Well, that's just, you know, we had a really good conversation, and then that just got really awkward, you know? I mean, my goodness, you know, the STD and now a book about something.
Oh, right.
Fareed, you know, thank you. This is going so well. So well. How do you put up with it, man? How do you put up with this guy?
So Ray, before we get out of here, how can we find you on social media? Or like,
so being in IT, I've learned that you're really not supposed to be on social media. It's
but
not
you
good.
have a podcast.
No, yeah. So you can go to the UndeRayted podcast. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. It's on all those things. But you know, I'm not a big guy on Instagram or TikTok or any of those things. Not even on Facebook, because back in 2017 my identity was stolen and that was it.
Done.
So you know, but yeah, I mean, you find me, just, you know what? I'm kind of old school. You want to find me? Call me, text me.
I like it. Well, once I chop this video up, you'll be out there.
All right, good. Good. Well, you know, we'll see what happens.
Ray, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
Like sincerely mean that.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me.
This has been very rewarding.
Yeah. And listen, if you need a fill-in on a regular basis because of Boo, you know, let me know. Let me know.
You're my guy. You're my guy.
I'm sorry, Boo. I love you.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Every Day a Better You. You know where to find us on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Take a look out. Every Day a Better You. Make it a great one.